Jason Levin is the MD at HDI Youth Marketeers, and today joins us on why agencies should structure themselves out of the communication business into what he calls the cultural business. Jason, a very warm welcome to you. You say that brands need to focus on developing two-way relationships with their consumers. We know that. In theory, that's what should be happening. But why isn't it all the time?
I think partly because it's two reasons. On the brand side, it's difficult. And on the agency side, I think if we're all quite honest with ourselves, lots of people have tried to shake it up a little, but we're probably in a rut. I don't think there's been a big revolution in the ad/comms industry for somewhere between 20 and 50 years.
But let's amplify brands that develop relationships with youth. You make the point that they find themselves a favorite, tick, I understand that, but it's a lasting relationship. So developing that relationship with the younger demographic, where do you start? How do brands find that point of entrenchment?
Well, I think firstly, youth are probably a proxy for all consumers. They're a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of the demands.
A little bit to a lot. Yeah.
I think increasingly short, hey, Jeremy. Like we say, your mother's doing on Facebook what you were doing 5 years ago. But
so to the proxy argument, and how does that work?
Yeah, I think they're just a good proxy for what every consumer is going to be doing soon. So in terms of their demand around immediacy and service, that's been around for 5 or 10 years, and now we're seeing it as a demand in every single consumer. But where we see brands really engaging, so I'm speaking about, of course, social media, but also experiential research where they're genuinely questioning consumers' preferences and then responding in terms of products and offerings, we see a much greater uptake. As you say, immediate uptake and much greater long-term loyalty. And
this is what you mean by youth being prosumers, is that they're driving the process a lot more than they used to do?
Yeah, I mean, we like the word prosumer because it takes the con out of consumer, but they co-producers of content now. They're co-producers of the brand's fortunes rather than the victims or the subjects of it.
Jason Levin, I'm a little skeptical, but then I'm paid to be so, about the content and about customers sharing stories around brands.
Yeah.
Yet it seems to work. What type of narrative, what type of stories are we talking about? What works?
I think things that are very heavily loaded with brand mentions and celebrity tweets about brands that everyone can see from a mile off or paid for don't work. Where it's a natural native conversation of brand evangelists who are saying something about a brand, it tends to work well. And I think probably the best example of this in the last 2 years was the launch of the iPhone 6s, where there were billboards all over the world, which were all user-generated photography off the phone that was unedited and profiled on literally like 20 by 8 meter billboards around the world.
I'm glad you used the word unedited because it's about it being unedited and often uncensored. But you show me many brands that are prepared to do that, because you're basically saying, here's my brand, you're saying that to the consumer, do with it what you want. And they might not like what comes back at them.
Completely. I mean, classical marketing is all about managing your brand in the consumer's eyes. And unfortunately, largely that ship has sailed. So we can live in a fool's paradise of managing the brand, but social media doesn't let you manage the brand anymore. If KFC drops some chicken breasts on the ground and then hoses them off, it certainly wouldn't ever be a desirable brand action, but there's no escaping it once it happens. So the floodgates are open, and either you jump in and swim, or you try to stand behind them and get washed away.
And it's the tonality of the response that's important, and as we've mentioned, being swift as well. Also, brands investing in communities is important. That finds a resonance with that important target market between maybe 16 and 25. Do something for me, and I will then support you.
Yeah, it's the mantra of I believe in brands that believe in me. 100% true, and growing even more so. I mean, I think as socioeconomically, youth especially are feeling more and more stretched and less likely to be employed and heavily undereducated. They're expecting private sector interventions in their lives. And it's not just a culture of expectancy, because there really are payback. I mean, brands that are doing consistently meaningful, sustainable things in communities, and I'm not speaking about planting vegetable gardens, I'm speaking about real proper marketing and brand interventions, are
So what does that mean? It's not vegetable gardens, it's not free stuff, what is it?
It's stuff that has to be related directly to the core of your brand. So Dettol soap teaching 1 million kids the benefit of hand washing in terms of preventing disease is something intrinsic to that brand, which has a societal benefit and a brand benefit.
But what a brand like that might have done in the past is they would then go out and tell people what they've done in terms of the initiative. Don't do that. Let it speak for itself. You don't have to mount a massive public relations campaign on the back of that, or do you? I don't know.
I mean, I think there has to be some amplification, but it should be user-generated amplification and natural. The minute you start PRing it, it loses authenticity and then it loses credibility, and you're right, it starts eroding the initiative.
So just the final point, investing in communities is important, but also looking for unconventional ways of doing things. So it's coming at it from a different angle, and that implies better strategic creativity.
Yes, and it implies huge level of consumer centricity instead of just speaking about it, understanding consumer needs and responding.
Jason Levin from HDI, thank you very much.
Pleasure.